I used to be a Christian. I had been my whole life until about 2014, and besides a few close friends and family members, nobody knew that I had left the Christian faith until about 2017. And since then, a lot of people have speculated my motivation for leaving the faith. But very few Christians have had any interest in simply asking me. For the most part, they seem satisfied with their own presumptions and spreading their own fabricated stories. A lot of rumors make their way back to me, and only God knows how many rumors don't. But the common theme with all the lies and rumors that I've heard is people assuming that I wanted to leave Christianity. I didn't, and in fact, I still wish I was a Christian. For the first 19 years of my life, I went to church 3 times a week: Sunday morning, Sunday evening, and Wednesday night. And several times each month, I went to gospel meetings, gospel singings, and Bible studies. And about 3 times a year, I went to week-long Bible camps. I was also homeschooled, so my science, history, government, literature, and even my math curriculum were Christian-based. And Bible study itself was one of my school subjects, as well as something that I did in my free time. I listened to Christian music, I watched Christian movies, I read Christian literature, and I even subscribed to Christian YouTubers. Everyone on both my mom and dad's side of the family were devout Christian, as were all of my friends. My dad was a preacher, my grandfather was a preacher, 3 of my 4 uncles were preachers, and my sister's husband was a preacher. Most of my family and friends were members of the Church of Christ, and so was I. Without getting into too much detail, the Church of Christ is a very hardcore Christian denomination. Unlike these New Age, non-denominational churches, the Church of Christ doesn't dance. It's not a light show, and it's not a rock concert. And there is no comedy, there is no drama, and there are no memes in the Sunday sermons. They aren't trying to make you laugh, they aren't trying to make you feel good, and they aren't even trying to make you cry. The Church of Christ is cold, it's dry, and it's bitter. And while all of the adults at Happy Church Incorporated are flailing around with their faces all constipated, the preschoolers in the Church of Christ are neck deep in New Testament theological seminary. And that's how I grew up. No strobe lights, no electric guitars, and no whiny preachers wearing skinny jeans. We didn't drink chocolate milk, we ate steak. And if you didn't catch that reference, you probably have a fog machine in your church. So yeah, I was a very knowledgeable and devout Christian. I took the Bible and its teachings very seriously. Christianity wasn't a face that I wore for social status. It wasn't a crutch that I used to vindicate my mistakes or my bad habits. And it wasn't something that I just went along with for convenience. I absolutely believed that the Bible was the inspired word of Yahweh himself. And I believed that Yahweh created the entire universe in 6 literal days 6,000 years ago. I believed that heaven and hell existed. I believed that Satan was a real entity with legions of demons who was set on corrupting Yahweh's perfect creation. I believed that Adam and Eve were the first humans. I believed that evolution was a lie created by the devil. And I believed that there was a global flood 4,000 years ago. And I believed that Yahweh impregnated the Virgin Mary, who then gave birth to Jesus Christ, who then died on the cross for the remission of our sins 2,000 years ago. I was baptized through full immersion in the name of Jesus Christ, and I did my best to live a sinless life so that I would receive eternal life after I died. If I ever messed up, I made sure to ask for forgiveness and then not repeat the same mistake. But I did pretty good. I never really messed up. I never struggled with any addictions, and I never had any desire to sin. And I knew that I had paradise waiting for me after I died, and it would be better than anything here on earth. I never doubted that at all. I never doubted anything that the Bible taught. Ever since I was a little kid, sitting in the church pew, listening to my dad stand behind the pulpit and speak with his deep and his rich and his eloquent voice, I always wanted to be a preacher. I wanted to save as many souls as I could. I wanted to encourage Christians to take the Bible more seriously. I wanted to help the church grow. I wanted to be the best Christian I could possibly be because I wanted to make Yahweh happy. I was passionate, I was excited, and I was determined. People seem to forget that or just don't realize it, but I was more devoted to Christianity than 95% of the Christians who condemn me for not being one. Christianity wasn't a bumper sticker, it wasn't a tattoo, and it wasn't something that I used to get likes and attention on social media. It was the core of my life. Which is why it surprises me and offends me, honestly, when Christians accuse me of wanting to leave Christianity, or worse yet, when they accuse me of never being a real Christian to begin with. So just to clear things up, I'd like to address the most popular reasons that I've heard people assume that I left Christianity for.
You left Christianity because you wanted to sin. You want to live a life without moral accountability. You want to be your own God and do whatever you want to do without any consequences. You just want to sin.
First of all, this one doesn't even make sense. If I knew that hell existed and that Christianity was true, I would also know that even if I left Christianity, I would still have to face Judgment Day and would still be accountable for my actions. Leaving Christianity would not absolve me of punishment. If I truly knew that Yahweh existed, there is no conceivable way that I would pretend that he didn't, or live a life that I knew would result in my infinite agony. And just as a side note, this is also why I have a strong suspicion that most so-called Christians don't really believe that the Bible is true, or really believe that Yahweh exists. Because if you did, you wouldn't be driving around with your car windows tinted darker than the state of Alabama legally allows you to, because that's in direct violation of Romans 13:1-5 and 1 Peter 2:13-17, which means that you are living in sin, and if the Bible was true, you would be going to hell for that. And maybe I'm wrong, but I don't believe that anyone would black out their car windows if they thought that the price was eternal torture. If you really believed that gossiping and lying and tax fraud were sins punishable by eternal scorching hellfire, and you believed that the judge was watching everything you do and listening to every thought that goes through your head, there's no way you would be spreading rumors or exaggerating stories or fudging the numbers on your taxes. So yeah, if you're warning me about hellfire, but I can't see through your windshield, I'll be sure to shield my eye when I wink at you, because we're both on the same page. You don't believe in hell any more than I do. But no, I did not leave Christianity because I wanted to sin. Not only because that would make absolutely no sense, but also because I never had any desire to sin. I've never been someone who wanted to live my life irresponsibly or selfishly. I didn't drink and party when I was a Christian, and I don't drink and party now. I wanted to make the most of my life and save as many people as I could when I was a Christian, and I want to make the most of my life and save as many people as I can now.
You left Christianity because you got angry at Yahweh. You just hated Yahweh. Something didn't go your way, so you became filled with rage towards Yahweh.
No, I never got angry at Yahweh. I was sad and upset when I realized he was just a myth, a bit devastated, but not angry. And that was as a result, not the cause of my leaving Christianity. I felt like Yahweh was my best friend. I was talking to him constantly throughout the day, every day. If I was alone, I was usually praying. I felt like me and Yahweh were really close, which we were, because he was a product of my imagination. But no, I never got angry at Yahweh, and I'm not angry at him now. I don't hate him. He's just a character from Jewish mythology that I brought to life in my head. I didn't leave Christianity because of anger or hate or rage towards anyone or anything. I left because of facts, not feelings.
You started listening to Richard Dawkins and other atheists and let them corrupt your mind. You were brainwashed by evolutionism and atheism. You opened your mind to Scientology and let your brain fall out.
First, Scientology is a stupid religion that believes that humans are reincarnated aliens and a bunch of other sci-fi bullcrap. But I don't know how many Christians have accused me of being a Scientologist. That's just sad. If you don't know the difference between Scientology and science, that reveals a lot about yourself. 1, you don't study other religions. And 2, you've never studied science. And 3, you talk about things you don't know anything about. But with that out of the way, no, I did not leave Christianity because of Richard Dawkins or other atheists or evolution or even science. I never read anything by Richard Dawkins until long after I left religion. And even now, he's not someone that I have a lot of of interest in. He's a great biologist, and that's about it. But I think that the reason that a lot of Christians bring up Richard Dawkins is because he's literally the only atheist they've ever heard of. I have read The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, but in my opinion, it's not really anything spectacular. If I had to recommend a book to Christians, it would probably be something by Bart Ehrman, or probably Bart Ehrman. Definitely not anything by Richard Dawkins. I actually never listened to or read anything by any atheists until after I had left Christianity. Because through the entire journey of me leaving Christianity, I still thought that being an atheist had something to do with worshiping Satan or hating God. The only book I was reading throughout that time was the Bible, and the only material I was reading or listening to online was Christian apologetics. Even after I left Christianity, I didn't consider myself an atheist, and I didn't believe in evolution either. Up until 2017, I still thought evolution was what Ken Ham and Kent Hovind talk about. It's not at all, not even close. When I left Christianity, I didn't even know anyone who wasn't a Christian. I left Christianity purely because I was studying Christianity, not because of any outside influence. I wasn't brainwashed by anyone except for Christians, and I left that indoctrination completely on my own.
Something bad must have happened to you. You only left Christianity because of a traumatic experience. It was all because your parents gave you a hard time.
No, absolutely not. I had a great life, and I had a great relationship with my parents, and I was a very popular guy. I was enjoying the church I was going to, I was enjoying the church activities and all of my church friends. I didn't leave Christianity because life was hard or because of some tragedy. I literally left Christianity at the easiest and most peaceful time in all of my life. Nobody hated me that I knew of, and I didn't hate anybody myself. I didn't leave because of trauma or drama. I left because I cared about the truth. I cared about being honest with myself and not pretending to believe something that I knew wasn't true. So people who know me personally bring up my parents. They think that me and my parents fought, and that's why I left Christianity. Me and my parents did fight a lot. We went through a really tough period, but that was because they found out that I wasn't a Christian anymore. It wasn't the reason that I left Christianity. Obviously, if I had been a Christian, they wouldn't have had a problem with me, and there never would have been a fight to begin with. The arguing started when they found out that I had left Christianity. It had nothing to do with me leaving in the first place. But I think some people want to believe that I left Christianity because of some emotional problem, instead of accepting that I left for intellectual reasons. Because if that's the case, they have to accept that education can lead someone away from Christianity, and that looks bad on them. So it's just easier to write someone off as an unfortunate victim of tragedy. These same Christians also like to leave out the fact that me and my parents get along great now. After years of studying the Bible together and lots of research and debating and sharing notes, none of us are Christian anymore. My dad was the most knowledgeable Christian I've ever known, and the most challenging opponent I've ever had to face. But being the intelligent and level-headed man that he is, after looking into everything, he accepted the facts. I didn't change his mind, I just challenged his beliefs. And so he tried to prove that they were true, and discovered that they weren't. I love my parents, by the way. They watch all of my videos. And even though they don't share them on Facebook because they don't want the world to know that they're proud of me, I guess it's okay. But no, I did not leave Christianity because of any traumatic event or because of my parents.
You let the devil mind control you away from Jesus. You got possessed by demons. You reject the truth because you're full of wickedness and evil.
How am I even supposed to respond to this? Am I just supposed to turn around and say, no, you're possessed by demons? Anyone can accuse anyone of being possessed by demons. Like, it's childish, it's stupid, and it's honestly disrespectful and hurtful. You are literally demonizing me. You're calling me evil because I don't believe in your superstitions anymore. I've never hurt anyone. I don't say hateful things. I offend people. Yeah, I offend a lot of people, but I don't fucking tell them that they're full of evil spirits. You have no evidence that demons exist, and you certainly have no evidence that there are demons inside of me. So to say that there are demons in me is dishonest, it's slanderous, it's hateful, and it's hurtful. All of those things are sins according to the book that I know a lot better than you do, and coincidentally, you believe in and I don't. So if you want to explain that one, go right ahead. The only reason you want to pretend that I'm being puppeteered by Casper is once again because you don't want to accept the fact that I left Christianity as a result of studying it and being honest with myself. Maybe you should try studying your holy book. It wouldn't hurt you to read John 8 or Matthew 7. Get rid of your own demons before accusing someone else of having them. It's people like you hypocrites, that first caused me to take a second look at Christianity. In 2013, I made some friends who went to a Baptist church. They invited me to visit, so I did. At the church, we took some selfies together, and I posted them on social media. I didn't think anything about it, but shortly after, I had preachers and friends texting me and cornering me at my regular church, telling me that I shouldn't be going to places like that Baptist church, because the people there, they're not real Christians, and they're not saved. Even my grandmother and my grandfather found out, and at the next family get-together, they pulled me aside just to let me know that the Church of Christ is the only church that saves. That bothered me. I started going to the Baptist church every Wednesday night, and after about a year I started going on Sundays too. And whenever they had a holiday party or a get-together or a community service day, I tried to go to those. The people at that Baptist church were the friendliest, most genuine, best group of humans I've ever met in my life, ever, to this date. But I did notice that their worship service and their teen study wasn't very Bible-focused. There were surface-level stuff, of course, but there was never any discussion of doctrine or theology, and there was never any Christian apologetics. It was very secular. And it was very casual, too. It wasn't stuffy and ritual like the Church of Christ, but it also wasn't an orgy of emotionally and mentally unstable adults dancing to disco lights and fog machines like these New Age, non-denominational franchise churches. I really liked that Baptist church. The people there had a real impact on my life, especially the youth pastor. He was one of the most influential people of my whole life, and he probably doesn't even remember me. But the longer I went to that church, the more I got shunned by the people I had grown up with, the Church of Christ, and the more passive-aggressive remarks and messages I received from people who I used to think were decent human beings. They were either politely condemning me to hell, or the friends that I was now going to church with. I didn't hear that kind of stuff from my Baptist friends. They weren't fixated on judging people or condemning other denominations or ostracizing people who visited a different church. In fact, more than once, my Baptist friends visited the Church of Christ with me, and I don't know how many times I invited my sister and other Church of Christ friends to visit the Baptist church with me. They wouldn't do it. I really wanted to introduce my sister to the youth pastor because I talked about him all the time. I wanted her to meet him because he was my role model. But she wouldn't do it. To her, the entire Baptist church was unholy, and that youth pastor and all of the amazing people that went there, they were just hellbound heathens. I was really in a dilemma at that time. The Church of Christ was right from a biblical standpoint about a lot of stuff, but they were so disgusting about it. They treated everyone who wasn't under their little umbrella as inferior, untouchables. The Baptist church did leave out a lot of stuff, and they took a lot of liberties in some areas, and they didn't get very deep in the Bible. But despite that, they were great people, and they treated people great. Now, were they hypocrites from a biblical standpoint? Yeah, they were, in a lot of ways. But the Church of Christ members who walked that fine line and who checked all of the little boxes, they were self-righteous and condescending, apathetic jerks. And they were the people who were going to be populating heaven? That was just messed up. And it made me step back and reevaluate everything. Now, it didn't make me question my faith in the Bible, but it did, for the first time, make me feel like something wasn't adding up. And it made me start thinking for myself. And it made me start asking myself bigger questions. And once I started asking myself questions, they never stopped. First it was doctrinal, and then it was theological. I started studying more, and the answers to my questions became more and more uncomfortable, each one blasting a bigger hole in my preconceived worldview than the last one. I didn't like the answers that I was discovering, so I tried harder and harder to prove that the Bible was true. I started watching a lot of Kent Hovind videos, and I started reading a lot of Answers in Genesis articles. I went to countless Christian apologetic websites, and every time I heard that a local church was having a sermon or a Bible study or a meeting about proving Christianity is true, I went to it. But they never had proof. None of them. just dishonest reasoning. And I didn't want their reasoning to be dishonest. I wanted them to lay down some truth. I wanted them to spill some tea. I wanted evidence, not logical fallacies sprinkled in sophisticated jargon. I was left wondering, is there anyone who can defend Christianity? I tried to. I tried to find evidence in the Bible. I tried to find evidence outside of the Bible. And I prayed for hours each day. I asked Yahweh to give me proof that Christianity was true. I believed that it was true. I had faith that it was true. I wanted it to be true. I just didn't have evidence that it was true. I hung on for a long time. There was no singular moment, but sometime in 2014, I finally admitted to myself that I couldn't defend Christianity. And as far as I knew, no one else could either. But I kept going to church fairly regularly throughout 2016. And even in 2017, I occasionally went to Bible studies and gospel meetings and random church services, usually just if somebody invited me. But I enjoyed all of that stuff. I liked Christianity. I wanted to be a Christian. I never wanted to leave it. I liked believing that there was an eternal paradise that I would go to after I died. And I liked believing that there was a God who watched over me and loved me and listened to me whenever I needed somebody to talk to. I didn't have to fear being alone, and I didn't have to fear death. I never wanted to give that up. I also really liked the social aspect of Christianity. Between all of the churches and church activities I had attended throughout my life, I had made a couple thousand acquaintances and a few hundred close friends. I had a really great support group. I always knew that each week I would see a few friends, and several times each month I would see a really cool group of people. And not a day went by without getting a text or a Snapchat or a message from at least a handful of people that cared about me. Before the week was over, I always had plans with someone for the weekend. And all of that was just because I was active in so many church groups. And I really missed that. I missed the friends that I used to have. I thought we had more of a connection than just religion. You know, I thought we both liked YouTube and making YouTube videos. I thought we both liked football. I thought we both liked art. I thought we both liked writing stories. I thought we both liked Star Wars, you know? But I guess not. I also always enjoyed the religious activities. I liked going to church. I liked Bible studies. I liked gospel meetings. I liked gospel singings. It was always something to look forward to. I would get to dress up and I would get to see a few dozen or a couple hundred people, you know. I would get to sing and I would get to listen to somebody's thoughts and I might learn something or I might be inspired to think about something in particular. Church was fun, you know. And it was also something that I was very much invested in. My entire life had been structured around church. At least half of my best memories have something to do with church or a church-related activity. I feel nostalgic whenever I drive by a church that I used to go to or visited. I feel nostalgic whenever I hear gospel singing. It's very near and very dear to my heart. I miss all of that stuff. I really wish I could be a Christian. Sometimes I seriously consider going back to church and just telling everybody, oh yeah, I believe all this stuff again, you know, and just pretend for the rest of my life. At least then people would like me again, and I would have friends again. I would have a support group again. I would have activities to look forward to every week. I would get invitations to potlucks and backyard football and game nights and beach trips, bonfires, campouts, all that good stuff. But I can't do that because despite all of the positive aspects of Christianity, it also does a lot of harm. Aside from being sexist and homophobic, Christianity also compels Christians to treat anyone who isn't in their denomination or in their religion as unclean, as broken, as foolish, as lost, and not worthy of friendship or hospitality. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness, or light with darkness? What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? 2 Corinthians 6:14 and 15. That's the reason the only texts I ever get anymore are from my mom and from my wife. And that's why my wife doesn't get invited to her family's Christmas, because she's not good enough for them anymore. You know, if Christians just believed stupid stuff and had get-togethers and sang and talked about religious stuff, that would be okay. I wouldn't be opposed to it. But it doesn't stop there. It's more than that. It's a cult. It emotionally manipulates people. It instills an elitist mentality where only the few in that specific denomination are right and everyone outside of it is blind and lost. They're inferior, they're dangerous, and they shouldn't be associated with. It tears families apart. It destroys relationships and lifelong friendships. It's tribalism at its worst. And all of it is done on the basis of faith. And that's why Christianity glorifies faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. For we walk by faith and not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. John 20:29. All of these good people are doing bad things because they have faith in something that isn't even true. Part of the reason so many people have faith in Christianity is because they were brainwashed by their parents and their culture. And their parents were brainwashed by their parents and their culture, who was brainwashed by their parents and their culture. But another reason I think so many people have faith in Christianity is because they want to believe in the good parts. They like the benefits of Christianity, and they're just willing to take the bad along with it. Or they just don't notice it because they're so blinded by the positive beliefs and the positive rewards from being a Christian. Those are the very same reasons why I wanted to remain a Christian and why I still sometimes wish that I was a Christian. The community itself is a massive benefit, and who doesn't want to believe that there's life after death or that there's a God who watches over you and loves you and listens whenever you want to talk to somebody? I think most people would like that to be true. But wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. And pretending that something's true, while it might trick your brain into believing that it's true, it won't make it real. And having faith in something doesn't make it real either. The Bible is not true. It's a collection of philosophy and parables. Most of the stories in the Bible never really happened, and the ones that didn't happen exactly the way the Bible describes it, and some of the stories were plagiarized. The Bible has been modified and edited to fit different agendas and to suit different time periods. Hundreds of books were once part of the Jewish and Christian theology and aren't anymore. They were removed and new books were forged and added later. Most of the descriptions in the Bible of the cosmos, the sun, the moon, the stars, and our own planet are absolutely incorrect. Those descriptions don't fit what we now know about the cosmos, but they perfectly fit what humans at the time that it was written believed about the cosmos and believed about our planet. The Bible is evidently a product of the human mind and the minds of thousands of different humans, which is why there are contradictions and disagreements from one book to the next. It was written by men, which is why it favors men over women. And it was written in a far less ethical world, which is why it condoned slavery and forced marriage. And it was written at a time without proper medical knowledge, which is why it contains directions to superstitious healing rituals and less than adequate treatment of conditions. The Bible is not a magic book, and it wasn't written or inspired by a magic man. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible that I like. Some stuff that's valuable, some stuff that's fascinating, and other stuff that I just wish was true. But wishing that something is true is not evidence that it is, or a justification to believe that it is when it clearly is not. Especially when the Bible vindicates and commands evil actions and practices. I completely understand that Christianity is comforting, it's convenient, and it supplies a host of social and even career benefits, but don't give up your ethical and your intellectual integrity just to swallow that blue pill. Don't give in to the pressure and feed the monster that's forcing division among families and communities. Gaining a bunch of friends whose friendship and smiles are only faith deep isn't worth cutting off everyone else who won't do the same. And giving in to a comforting lie isn't worth blinding yourself to reality and campaigning for others to do the same. We shouldn't have to be a part of some club just to be friends, or to have a potluck, or to get together and sing. We can do that just because we love each other without having to discriminate or ostracize anyone. And we should be able to enjoy this life without pretending that there's one after it. We all have expiration dates, but that doesn't make us worthless. It instead makes us infinitely more valuable. Because I can only see you smile so many times. and I won't know which one will be the last that I see. So let's make as many as we can and appreciate every one of them. Happy fucking Easter.